Okay. So have you ever, looked at your passports, like a stack of them, and just been like, whoa, I've got all
Yeah.
these citizenships?
Yeah,
It's a pretty cool feeling, I think.
it is. I think it speaks to just how globally connected things are these days. That dual citizenship is becoming um,
More common.
more common. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's not just a small segment of the population anymore, and it really does open up so many possibilities.
Absolutely. And whether it's something you were, born with because your parents are from different countries,
Right.
or you maybe married someone from another country or went through the whole naturalization process to become a citizen somewhere new, you're kind of part of this unique club.
You are. You are. And
It-
it's a club with amazing perks, but also some complexities that you need to be aware of.
exactly. And today, we're going to really zero in on one particular aspect of that dual citizenship life,
Yeah.
which is using your U.S. passport
Yeah.
when it's the best tool for the job, when you might actually be better off using your other passport, and how to avoid any kind of legal hiccups along the way.
Exactly.
Right.
We want to make sure you're traveling smoothly, confidently, and without any unnecessary stress.
Consider this your guide, your roadmap to navigating the world with your U.S. passport,
Yeah.
when you've also got that other citizenship to consider.
Right. We've done the research, we've combed through the information, and our goal is to present it to you clearly, concisely, without getting bogged down in, you know, dense legal language.
We're all about clarity here.
Absolutely.
So the core question we're tackling head on today is this: as a dual citizen, when should you reach for that U.S. passport?
Right.
And when might it actually be wiser to use that other passport that you've got?
Exactly.
Okay, let's break this down.
Let's do it. So first things first, what exactly are we talking about when we say dual citizenship?
Yeah.
Basically, it means being recognized as a citizen by two countries simultaneously
At the same time.
at the same time. Yeah,
Oh.
you have legal ties and obligations to both.
And like we mentioned earlier, there are several ways you can end up in this dual citizen situation.
Right.
You could be born into it, like we talked about, with parents from different countries.
Uh-huh.
You could acquire it later in life through marriage,
Yep.
or through that naturalization process where you become a citizen of a new country.
Exactly. And I think it's important to point out that the legal implications of being a dual citizen can vary quite a bit depending on which countries are involved.
Oh, absolutely.
Each country has its own set of laws and regulations that define what it means to be a citizen, what rights you have, what responsibilities you have, and, potentially even where you might face some conflicts.
Yeah, like think about things like taxation.
Oh, huge.
Which country has the right to tax your income?
Exactly.
Or jurisdiction. If something happens, legally speaking, which country's laws apply?
It gets complicated quickly.
It does, but our sources do a good job of breaking down some of those key differences.
They do. And it's not all about navigating potential problems.
Oh, definitely not.
There are some pretty amazing advantages to being a dual citizen.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Think about the freedom to live and work in two different countries.
Uh-huh.
The potential to access different healthcare systems or educational opportunities that might not be available to you otherwise.
It's like having double the options.
Exactly, double the opportunities.
Yeah.
But of course, with those opportunities come responsibilities.
This is true.
Generally speaking, you're expected to follow the laws of both countries where you hold citizenship,
Right.
and that includes fulfilling your tax obligations in both places.
It's all about finding that balance, understanding what comes with each citizenship.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's shift our focus specifically to that U.S. passport.
Right.
It's tempting to just view it as a travel document,
Yeah.
something you need to get across borders. But for a U.S. citizen, especially one who also holds another citizenship, it represents something much more significant. It's a symbol of your legal status and the rights and protections that come with being an American.
It's like a key that unlocks a whole set of benefits and privileges.
Exactly.
And the information we've gathered really stresses that a U.S. passport is so much more than just a fancy ID.
Right.
It's proof of your citizenship and all those legal protections that go with it.
And for dual citizens in particular, having that U.S. passport is really essential for navigating the sometimes tricky world of international travel.
Absolutely.
It provides that solid legal identity that's recognized across different countries and their legal systems.
It's like having a universal translator for your citizenship.
I like that.
So let's get down to the practicalities here. Beyond just getting you across borders, your U.S. passport also connects you to consular services when you're traveling abroad.
Right.
If something unexpected happens, you lose your passport, it gets stolen,
Yeah.
You need help getting emergency travel documents or even legal advice.
Uh-huh.
The U.S. Embassy or consulate is there to help U.S. citizens.
Absolutely.
And your U.S. passport is how you access that support.
So crucial to remember that. And let's not forget about the pure practicality of travel. A U.S. passport carries a lot of weight globally.
It does.
It's consistently ranked as one of the most powerful passports in terms of how many countries you can enter without needing a visa beforehand.
Yeah. The Henley Passport Index, which tracks this sort of thing, always puts the U.S. passport up there near the top.
Exactly. And beyond just the number of countries, it's also about credibility.
Oh, for sure.
In a lot of parts of the world, a U.S. passport is seen as a very reliable form of identification, which can really make things easier when you're traveling.
It's like having a VIP pass in some cases.
Exactly. So with all of that in mind, when should you actually pull out that U.S. passport versus your other one?
Right. Let's get to the heart of the matter.
All right. The clearest situation is when you're traveling to or from the United States.
Okay.
The general rule there is pretty straightforward.
Use your U.S. passport.
Use your U.S. passport.
Defense.
You're presenting yourself as a U.S. citizen to U.S. officials, streamlines the process, avoids potential questions or delays.
It's like using the right currency, avoids confusion.
Now things get a little more nuanced when you're traveling to other countries.
Right.
The best choice of passport might actually depend on where you're going.
Yeah.
Some countries might only recognize you as a U.S. citizen if you enter on a U.S. passport.
Really?
Yeah, this can be really important for accessing certain rights or maybe taking advantage of visa-free entry if your U.S. passport qualifies for it.
So it's not always just about convenience.
No, sometimes it's about making sure you have the right documentation to be recognized as who you are.
So use your U.S. passport when it's going to give you the most advantages.
Exactly. Or when the U.S. has particularly strong diplomatic ties with that country.
It's all about strategy.
It is, and it goes beyond just tourism. What about situations where you need to interact with the U.S. government?
Like if you're applying for federal benefits or looking for a federal job.
Exactly. Or needing assistance from a U.S. embassy or consulate overseas.
In those cases, your U.S. passport is non-negotiable.
Absolutely. These services are for U.S. citizens, and your passport is your proof.
So let's flip the script for a second. Are there ever times when using your foreign passport might actually be the smarter move?
There are definitely scenarios where it could be advantageous.
Okay, give me an example.
Say you're traveling to a country that requires U.S. citizens to get a visa.
Okay.
But citizens of your other nationality can enter visa-free.
Uh-huh.
Using your foreign passport in that case could save you a lot of hassle and paperwork.
That's a great point. So it's about being strategic and understanding the entry rules for both of your nationalities.
Exactly. Now, this brings up another crucial point for dual citizens to think about.
Okay.
What are the potential legal obligations and risks that come into play when you're choosing which passport to use?
Right, because it's not just a matter of personal preference.
Not at all. The sources we've looked at really emphasize that your choice of passport can have serious legal consequences.
So we're not just talking about like a little slap on the wrist here.
No. If you don't follow the rules of either country regarding entry and exit, you could be facing fines or even more serious legal trouble.
Okay, so what kind of rules are we talking about here?
Well, a big one that comes up is tax responsibility.
Taxes always got to get involved.
Right. The U.S. requires all of its citizens, even those living abroad with dual citizenship, to report their worldwide income to the IRS.
The IRS, yeah, they don't mess around.
They don't. So you might end up having to file taxes in both the U.S. and your other country of citizenship, which can get very complex very quickly.
That sounds like a headache waiting to happen.
It can be. The best advice is to really do your research, understand the tax laws in both countries, and see if there are any tax treaties that might help you avoid being taxed twice on the same income.
So maybe talk to a tax expert who specializes in this kind of international situation.
Yeah, that's never a bad idea. Now, another area to be aware of is military service.
Oh, right. Some countries have mandatory military service for their citizens.
They do, and sometimes that obligation can extend to dual citizens regardless of where they actually live.
Even if they've never even lived in that country.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. And if you don't fulfill those obligations, you could face penalties from that country.
So it's not something to take lightly.
No, not at all. And beyond these formal legal obligations, there's also this idea of dual allegiance.
Like owing loyalty to two countries at the same time.
Exactly. And the sources we've looked at point out that the current geopolitical climate can play a role in your travels.
Like if there's tension between the U.S. and one of your countries of citizenship.
Right. Traveling to either of those countries could lead to more scrutiny or complications.
It's like walking a tightrope sometimes.
It can be. So it's definitely something to be mindful of when planning your trips.
Now, speaking of tricky situations,
Mhm.
what about traveling to more high-risk countries?
Like places experiencing conflict or instability.
Exactly. Do the sources offer any guidance on which passport might be safer or more practical to use in those cases?
Yeah, the advice generally leans pretty strongly towards using your U.S. passport in those kinds of situations. Yeah, the reasoning is that it usually provides a more direct path to protection and resources through U.S. embassies and consulates in those regions.
So it's about having that extra layer of security.
Exactly. And it's really important to stay informed about the U.S. Department of State travel advisories.
Oh, yes, those are crucial.
They're there for a reason. Pay attention to the risk levels they assign to different countries and any specific recommendations they might have.
Because things can change quickly.
They can, and if something were to happen in a high-risk country, having that U.S. passport can be essential for things like emergency evacuation, accessing legal support, and just having a recognized way to communicate with the outside world through the U.S. Embassy.
So it's not just about getting you out of a jam.
No, it's about having access to resources and support if things go wrong.
And what about the more everyday kind of consular protection? What rights do dual citizens have when they travel using a U.S. passport?
Well, the sources make it clear that dual citizens traveling on a U.S. passport are entitled to the full range of consular services and protection from the U.S. government.
Just like any other U.S. citizen.
Exactly. It's a significant benefit of holding that U.S. citizenship.
So what would that look like in real life? What are some examples of that assistance?
Sure. If you were to find yourself in legal trouble overseas, the U.S. Embassy or consulate could provide you with a list of local attorneys,
Okay.
help you communicate with the local authorities, and offer general support throughout the legal process.
So they're like your advocate.
They can't act as your lawyer, but they can definitely help you navigate the system.
And it's not just limited to legal issues, right?
No, if there's a natural disaster or some kind of civil unrest in the country you're visiting, consular officials can help coordinate evacuation efforts,
Wow.
help you find safe shelter, and provide really crucial information and guidance.
So it's really about having that safety net.
Exactly. Now, the sources do point out an important caveat.
Okay.
While the U.S. government will absolutely make every effort to assist detained dual citizens, the laws of the host country ultimately come first.
So it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card.
No, it's not a guarantee that you'll be treated differently than any other citizen of that country.
It's always best to be aware of the laws and customs of wherever you're traveling.
Absolutely. And it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with the consular services offered by both countries of your citizenship, just in case.
Be prepared.
Always. Now let's switch gears for a moment and talk about the practicalities of actually getting or renewing a U.S. passport as a dual citizen.
Okay, so what's involved in that process?
The sources provide a pretty clear roadmap. First things first, you need to gather the documents that prove your U.S. citizenship.
Like a birth certificate or a naturalization certificate.
Exactly. Or if you have an old U.S. passport, that could work too. And you'll also need a valid government-issued photo ID.
Driver's license or military ID, something like that.
Right. Once you've got your documentation sorted, you need to fill out the correct application form.
Are there different forms depending on the situation?
There are. The DS-11 is for first-time applicants,
Okay.
and the DS-82 is for renewals.
Got it.
You can usually find those forms online on the State Department's website, or you can pick them up at a passport acceptance facility.
Like at the post office?
Exactly. And of course, there are fees involved.
Ah, yes, the fee.
There's a cost to apply or renew a U.S. passport. But the good news is that you can usually pay extra for expedited processing if you need your passport in a hurry.
Because those standard processing times can be a little lengthy.
They can. Standard processing currently takes about 10 to 12 weeks, but expedited processing can get you your passport in about 5 to 7 weeks.
Still not exactly instant, but definitely faster.
Definitely faster. And the sources really stress the importance of checking the most up-to-date processing times on the State Department's website.
Because they can fluctuate?
They can, and apply well in advance of any planned travel.
Better safe than sorry.
Absolutely. Now, what are some common mistakes people make that can slow down the passport application process?
According to the information we've gathered, incomplete applications and incorrectly filled out forms are pretty common culprits.
Yeah, it's easy to overlook a detail or two.
It is. So double-check everything. Make sure you provided all the necessary information and documents before you submit your application.
Good advice. And if you do run into any snags or have questions along the way, the National Passport Information Center is a great resource.
They can help you sort things out.
They can. Now, to really bring this all home and illustrate how a dual citizen might approach these passport decisions in the real world.
Yeah, let's get specific.
Let's say you're planning a business trip to China.
Okay.
Our sources suggest that using your U.S. passport in this scenario could make for a smoother entry process and potentially fewer visa requirements.
Because of the diplomatic relationship between the U.S. and China.
Exactly. It's all about leverage.
What about a leisure travel scenario?
All right, let's say you're heading to Japan for a vacation. If you travel on your U.S. passport, you might be eligible for Japan's visa waiver program, which lets you stay for a certain amount of time without having to apply for a visa beforehand.
Saves you time and paperwork.
Exactly. Using a different passport might not give you that same advantage.
And could lead to a more complicated entry process.
Exactly. Now, what about a more complex situation like dealing with immigration matters?
Okay.
Our sources indicate that presenting your U.S. passport in an immigration-related scenario can give you certain legal protections and access to consular assistance from the U.S. government.
So it's like an extra shield.
It can be, especially when you're navigating those more intricate legal processes.
So the takeaway here is that understanding the specifics of your situation and the potential advantages your U.S. passport can offer can really make a difference.
Absolutely. It's about making informed choices that can improve your travel experiences and your overall sense of security.
So if there's one big thing to remember from our deep dive today, it's this.
What's that?
Knowledge is power when it comes to using your U.S. passport as a dual citizen.
Couldn't agree more. And some practical advice to keep in mind is that, as a general rule, always use your U.S. passport when you're entering or leaving the United States.
Okay.
And when you're traveling to other countries, take the time to think about the specific entry rules for your destination and whether your U.S. passport gives you any particular benefits.
Like visa-free entry or a stronger diplomatic connection.
Exactly. It's about strategy and recognizing that your U.S. passport is a valuable tool that can make your international travel smoother and provide a more solid foundation for your legal standing worldwide.
It's all about empowerment.
Exactly. Now, this brings us to a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
As the world of international travel and regulations continues to change, how can dual citizens stay informed about their specific circumstances and make sure they're always making the most educated decisions about which passport to use?
Yeah, because things are always evolving.
They are. So staying proactive and informed is going to be crucial for navigating this landscape successfully.
It's like having a good GPS for your citizenship.
I like that. It'll help you find the best route.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of U.S. passports for dual citizens.
We'll catch you next time.
See you then.